meditation. Thank you very much. Let's be seated. I will ask the secretary to read the order.
Debate on vote number 6, International Relations and Cooperation Appropriation Bill.
Thank you very much. I will now invite the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation to open the debate for us. Honorable Mashabane Maikwana.
Okay.
Can you switch it on for her? Thanks.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Ministers of DICO, Honorable Ministers present, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, and representatives of international organizations, members of Parliament, distinguished guests. We are honored to present this budget speech in this year, 40th anniversary of the Soweto uprising. We pay tribute to the 16th of June generation, and I can claim to be near that generation myself, and who braved the work they did, which ended up bringing South Africa to the declaration of an apartheid as a crime against humanity, and triggered a groundswell of international solidarity against the apartheid regime. We shall forever remain eternally grateful to the international community for their role in the struggle against apartheid and the birth of our freedom. This is also a year of human rights with specific focus on women's rights, as declared by the heads of states in the last summit in January. For us in South Africa, and I'm sure the world over, human rights are women's rights. It coincides also with the 60th anniversary of the historic march of women in this country, 20,000 women in 1956, who marched against past laws and against all inhuman, unjust, and discriminatory apartheid laws. In this regard, we reaffirm the centrality of human rights in our foreign policy and recommit ourselves to intensify our efforts and promotion of protection of women and other rights in particular. During the State of the Nation in February on the 11th, President put the centrality of the NDP as an overarching apex policy framework that guides work we do. In order to achieve this, we all have to focus on making sure that even in these difficult times, we eradicate poverty, we continue to lower inequality, create jobs, and making transition to a resilient carbon economy free. Foreign relations must be driven by the country's domestic, economic, and political milieu. We have always been saying in DICO, we always think globally and act locally. In pursuance of this, the department, DICO, has translated this into the following. 1, sustain political and economic and social relations, strengthen political and economic integration and development of SADC, the African agenda. 4, strengthen the consolidation of South-South relation. 5, leverage on our historic North-South dialogue. And we've seen this happening with the successes we are making with the SKA in Northern Cape. I've seen the Premier and the Honorable Minister last night, and the Premier confirming that life is changing in Northern Cape because of SKA. Lastly, that we advocate for the reform of strengthening of global systems of governance. Advocate for the reform of strengthening of global system of governance that is equally representative. Honorable members, we live in turbulent world characterized by economic crisis on one hand and political conflict on the other. These twin global challenges pose a serious threat to peace and development in the world. Peace and development are two sides of the same coin. According to the UN's 2016 World Economic Situation Prospects publication, the global economy is expected to grow sluggishly to a mere 2.3% in 2016 and 3.2% in 2017. The global economic downturn has forced many governments to adopt fiscal consolidation measures side by side with stimulus packages. South Africa is one of the developing countries whose economics are fully integrated in the global economy, hence the impact. This budget we are presenting here today incorporates the budget reduction of 153 million in 2016 and 17 financial year, and that will amount to 1.8 billion reduction over the MTEF. I was saying earlier on to the media that this is almost a head cut because there's no more hair. The hard choices before us in the light of these budget cuts are to close down missions. I don't know if you can afford to do that. And as some people have suggested, and face reality of losing momentum on the gains we have made and achieved since 1994, as evidenced by the increase in trade and investment work that we've done. Let me give you examples. In 1994, DICO had only 7 representatives in the, it wasn't DICO, Foreign Affairs in the continent. Today we have 47. Consequently, South Africa's trade in the continent increased 39 times, from 11 billion in 1994 to 385 billion rand in 2015. We are targeting R500 billion trade with Africa by 2019. As at the end of 2015, 20% of our trade was conducted with the African continent. Honorable members and chair, with regards to Asia and Middle East, South Africa's trade and investment in this region has grown considerably and continue to do so. In 1994, trade with Asia and Middle East combined was approximately 45 billion and has increased approximately to 760 billion for Asia and 116 billion with the Middle East, despite the sanctions that Iran had to face. Working together with other government departments, we can achieve trillion rand trade with these regions by 2019. Based on the above, it can be deduced that there is a direct correlation between the growth of our missions and the phenomenal expansion of our trade and investment relations in both Africa, Asia, and Middle East. The same applies to the Americas and Europe. With additional economic diplomacy efforts and the enhance of the national coordination, South Africa's trade with the world can reach 2 trillion by the end of the administration. Without a doubt, an unprecedented trade expansion. At the same time, as we explore new markets, we continue to maintain close economic ties with the industrialized economies of the North, and as I said earlier on, North-South dialogue, enhancing the economy and political dialogue, and as part of our economic diplomacy strategy, remain primarily source of foreign direct investment, and also a little bit of ODA as much as they're cutting down as they have their own problems. In addition to the economic uncertainties we face, Madam Chair, the global security situation has become more precarious in the recent past. We have witnessed with concern the growing extremism, increased acts of terrorism, and interstate conflict in various regions across the world, including in the Sahel. The long-standing conflict in Syria and in the instability which was man-made or created in Libya are but examples of the conflict. These developments have led to an increase in migration flows as people flee the consequence of the conflict. It is important that the root causes of migration are addressed, especially the impact on women and children. Chair and members, honorable members, our development is intertwined with that of the region of SADC. Hence, our renewed revamping of the industrialization in our region and with Africa at large. We also seek to radically alter the post-colonial patterns where Africa was a supplier of raw materials. Africa should produce value-added goods and for exports into the global economy. It is only through this that we can address the paradox of a rich resource continent inhabited by poverty-stricken population and make a decisive break with the past. We are all aware of the free trade arrangement of the COMESA, EAC, and SADC, which was signed off in June in Egypt, which brings about free trade for 625 million people and a total of gross domestic product of about 1.6 trillion US dollars, which will immensely help Africans to help themselves. The tripartite FTA represents an important milestone, and we are working very hard to make this a reality. Led by His Excellency President Zuma, the AU Assembly unanimously re-elected South Africa for the second consecutive two-year term to the AU Peace and Security Council. We have rotation, but the world out there, just outside your door, believes in the leadership of His Excellency President Zuma and South Africa. And that's why even when our term ends, it's extended because they can see the fruits. Only the blind are refusing to see, and there's absolutely nothing we can do. But some are paid to make the little noise they're making here, because if they don't, where will they get their salaries? We are working towards silencing the gun as an African agenda. Africa and Africans have an agenda to work on, and we shall not be waylaid by the little noises made by people who have no plans. South Africa will intensify its diplomatic efforts to help Lesotho, Burundi, South Africa, South Sudan,
Order, honorable
and the
members.
Great Lakes region. Allow me to take this opportunity again to show that the world, starting from the visit of President a few days ago to the
Order, honorable members.
to Iran, that South Africa is respected. We take this opportunity to commend, if not to congratulate, the outgoing chairperson of the AU Commission, our very own daughter of the soil, Dr. Dlamini Zuma, for her admirable leadership, in particular conceptualization of Agenda 2063, which has since been adopted as the continent's vision for the Africa we want. No longer just African agenda. Her emphasis on the continent's self-reliance and funding of AU's programs and projects will be one of her enduring legacies. Lastly, we salute her for the tireless work which has resulted in a marked improvement of the working methods of the AU. Chairperson, in pursuit for the NDP goals, particularly concerning the energy security, we have engaged mutually beneficial partnership with the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I'm happy to report the Memorandum of Understanding between the DRC, which was signed in 2011. The project, when completed, will be significant addition to the energy mix, contributing 15,000 megawatts to the our national grid. The African continent continues to leverage, Your Excellencies, relations with the strategic partners such as China, and in order to achieve its developmental objectives as set out in our Agenda 2063. I single out China because of FOCAC. Because when we said to China, it cannot be that we have this relationship, but when it is time for heads of states to meet, if it's in Africa, it's called a ministerial meeting. If it's China, it's a summit, because all leaders will be going there. The Chinese listened to us, and we had the very first summit at heads of states of FOCAC in this country immediately, well, almost less than 6 months after the successful summit of the AU, which we hosted. China has pledged 60 billion for Africa's skills development, socio-economic infrastructure development, from which South Africa and the continent at large will benefit. So we are still very happy with the successful FOCAC that President Zuma and President Xi Jinping co-chaired. 23 agreements, among others, close to 100 billion rands were signed, because prior to the FOCAC, we had a state visit by China to South Africa. Our cooperative partners with emerging economies complement other existing platforms which we utilize, like BRICS, which we are very proud of, and Africa's developmental needs and aspirations have been fully incorporated in BRICS. BRICS New Development Bank opened its headquarters in Shanghai, and the Africa Regional Center will be opening doors soon. As has been reported, the NDP has approved its first tranche in April. Each member state has been allocated the amount of money that I've already referred to of $180 billion for renewable energy. The funding of infrastructure projects promotes sustainable development. Africa's partnership with the USA, India, Korea, Canada, Japan, and all other cooperating partners are also yielding positive and socio-economic results. In the spirit of mutual beneficial global cooperation, we will continue to participate in the G20 process in our capacity as co-chair of the G20 working group, also led by His Excellency President Zuma. As the chairperson of the G77 plus China, we've seen the successful, as I said earlier on, conclusion of the Sustainable Development Goals, because we spoke as one, led by South Africa, and had unanimous adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals that replaced the MDGs. And this is linked directly to our own NDP, and also work closely with our Africa We Want, or Agenda 2063. We are satisfied that we have done that was needed for us to do, including the outcome of the climate change negotiations, where there was a legally binding agreement, holistic binding agreement, which we, South Africa, had the honor to sign by Minister Malewa. In this regard, the Paris Agreement and the package supporting decisions covering climate change pre- and post-2020 periods marks the successful conclusion of the 4-year negotiation process under the Durban Platform Enhanced Actions of the UNFCCC that took place here in South Africa in Durban a few years ago. South Africa signed the Paris Agreement. I've already mentioned that, and we are very proud of it, because indeed it was confirming that the Durban Platform of Action was the correct way to go. We have concluded the G77 chairpersonship in China with pride and handed over now to Thailand. We remain convinced, ladies and gentlemen, Chair, that the UN is the preeminent organization of the maintenance of global peace and security, and the advancement of development. We will therefore continue to advocate for its reforms, particularly the reform of the UN Security Council, to ensure that this body is both responsive to the needs of the developing countries and truly representative. DECO will intensify efforts to ensure cohesion and better coordination of South Africa's international engagements. I am convinced that we can avoid duplication, because some provinces behave as if we are a Federal Republic of South Africa, when we are not. In this regard, we take deliberate measures to impress upon stakeholders to implement measures and guidelines for the enhanced coordination of South Africa's international work. As you may recall, we announced in the budget vote that a South African Council
Round up,
of
Minister, you
International-
have 1 minute left.
Sequoia, comprising of leaders of academic business, leaders, civil society, has been launched. And
Order.
is doing very well. Our diplomatic efforts have not gone unnoticed. South Africa has recently been conferred. I want Honorable Chair to allow me to say this one. Our diplomatic efforts globally have not gone unnoticed, and South Africa has recently been conferred the Distinguished Diplomatic Service Award from the World Affairs Council in Washington, D.C. for outstanding commitment to global international or relations work. One young diplomat who had just returned from Germany said, the Germans are asking every day, post the World War II, Germany did not turn around its economy in 20 years. But they are wondering, why are South Africans thinking this miracle is going to happen just
Thank you
with
very
them?
much, Honorable Minister.
Thank you.
The time is up. Sikhuluma esilandelayo ngusihlalo wekomiti uMnumzana Masango. Hlonishwa.
Honorable House Chairperson, Honorable Minister Nkwana Mashabane, Honorable Deputy Minister, Ministers Mfegeto and Lenders, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests in the gallery, fellow South Africans. As we support the budget of this department, I dedicate my remarks to the late Johnston Johnny Mfanafuthi Makhathini, Ambassador Extraordinaire, a multilingual interlocutor, and a great patriot. Johnny Makhathini was an astute diplomat and a stoic fighter against the racist apartheid regime at the United Nations from 1977 to 1987. In one of his seminal statements delivered to the United Nations General Assembly on the 24th November 1978, he said the following, I quote, "In 5 years' time, in 1984 to be exact, Africa will be commemorating one of the saddest and most challenging chapters in the history of the human race. It will be the 100th anniversary of the Berlin Conference, when some Western powers met and carved up the map of Africa to satisfy their imperialist ambitions. We remind the representatives here of that historic event because this debate takes place during the International Anti-Apartheid Year, something that has been hailed as a proof of the international community's determination to intensify the campaign for the isolation and the weakening of the apartheid regime," close quote. The ANC shall forever cherish the selfless contribution made by Makhathini in the international front in pursuit of the objectives of the Freedom Charter. Honorable House Chairperson and members, South Africa's progressive internationalism, our independent views, and courage on the international stage have been widely acknowledged. Through this department, our country plays a significant role in the UN, the African Union, the Pan-African Parliament, BRICS, G20, G77, and others. Over the last 22 years, we have contributed in no small measure in the peacemaking, peacekeeping, and peace enforcement efforts within the continent and the world. In addition to contributing on matters of good governance and human rights, we also participate in the SADC election observation missions at both executive and parliamentary levels. Honorable Khalapa, can I persuade you to agree that we support our current diplomatic footprint of 126 missions because it is in the best national interest and other geostrategic considerations. As a nation, We don't want to be a passive political passenger on the global stage whilst human civilizations evolves. To prove that we are doing exceedingly well in the international stage, South Africa became the first country to receive the Distinguished Diplomatic Service Award in the USA recently. The minister just spoke about that. Congratulations, Minister Nkwana Mashabane. On behalf of the committee, I seize this opportunity to congratulate Dr. Vasu Gounden of Accord, which was ranked number 63 out of 6,800 think tanks in the world by the Pennsylvania University in 2015. Dr. Vasu Gounden has recently been conferred an honorary degree by the University of KZN for contributing to conflict resolutions in Africa and the world. Dr. Gounden, take a bow. Honorable members, history beholds that all of us should pursue our national interest in the context of the principles and objectives enunciated in the Freedom Charter, the National Development Plan, Vision 2030, and the State of the Nation addresses. Honorable Minister, we need an aggressive, something that should be called Pan-African Trade Negotiating Team in the World Trade Organization to offset the continuous trade deficit against Africa. As you are aware, the large populations of humanity cannot swim in a cesspool of poverty, whilst a few wallow in opulence. This phenomenon is a recipe for all manner of instability. Fellow compatriots, the aspirations embodied in the African Agenda 2063 are a quintessential fulfillment of the injunction and visionary leadership of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first president, who noted, I quote, "We all want a united Africa, not only in our concept of what unity connotes, but united in our common desire to move forward together in dealing with all the problems that can best be solved only on a continental basis," close quote. Thus shall we make bold our unassailable assertion that Nkrumah contributed immensely to the Pan-Africanism movement that inspired Africa's leadership to found the OAU in 1963, now AU in 2002. The AU requested all member states to pass resolutions in their parliaments in support of the African Agenda 2063. Our parliament acceded to this request. South Africa has hosted 2 African Union summits, 2002 and 2015. And we played a great role in the establishment of the African Standby Force. In pursuit of the South-South cooperation, our country is a worthy member of BRICS and other bilateral forums. We applaud the new development bank for disbursing the first loans to the member states. This proves that our membership of BRICS is in the best national interest. Honorable House Chair, this year marks the 20th anniversary of formal bilateral cooperation between South Africa and Cuba, which began in 1996 with the arrival in South Africa of the first group of medical doctors. This was the beginning of a bilateral partnership that has expanded to other areas like human settlements, public works, education, water and sanitation, arts and culture, defense and professional training in Cuba, amongst others. It is important, House Chair, to note that because of its nature, this cooperation has a direct impact on thousands of people on both countries. This anniversary may be celebrated through a debate in Parliament, legislatures, including symposia, exhibitions, lectures, seminars, and a possible visit to Cuba by Parliament. Members, during the Israeli Apartheid Week, we noted and were deeply disheartened by the current wanton destruction of homes, schools, clinics, and the infrastructure of the indigenous Palestinians in the occupied areas of West Bank and Gaza. The continuous denial of human rights, the restrictive checkpoints at and the merciless shooting of the youth by the Israeli police and soldiers is reminiscent of the old apartheid South Africa. As of last year, almost 700,000 Jewish nationals were resettled in the Palestinian territories, thus making the two-state solution unworkable. President Zuma captured it succinctly to the South African Jewish Board of Deputies when he said that a free Palestine does not mean no existence of the state of Israel. Earlier this month, our committee attended the Palestinian Forum for Dialogue in Franschhoek, which brought together for the first time 25 Palestinian political leaders and youth belonging to different political formations from Gaza and the West Bank. We applaud the UN for hosting the Palestinian flag at their headquarters. This shows that the world does not agree with the USA and Israel in delaying the Palestinian statehood. The committee congratulates South Africa and Palestine for unveiling the colossal statue of President Mandela at the city of Ramallah last week. Compatriots, the ANC continues to express its disquiet that Western Sahara, after years of Spanish colonial subjugation, is still languishing under the excruciating colonial yoke of Morocco. Its mineral and marine resources are selfishly exploited for Morocco's gain in full glare of the UN Security Council and France. The UN must stop its cowardly equivocation and enforce the referendum so that the Sahrawis can freely express their will on whether they want autonomy, a Bantustanization policy, or integration, or independence, as advocated by the Polisario Front. Honorable House Chair, the committee notes that the world continues to be afflicted by civil wars, migrations unseen since the Second World War, that will thus occasion the statelessness of millions of people and a scramble for scarce resources. There are still many unresolved political conflicts, territorial, governance, disputes, and constitutional matters within the African continent, such as in Swaziland, Somalia, the DRC, Mali, Guinea-Bissau, and South Sudan. In South Sudan, we take heart the recent developments of the swearing in of Dr. Riek Machar as Deputy President. Hopefully, Juba has taken a step in the walk towards silencing the guns by establishing the government of national unity. We applaud the facilitative role of Deputy President Ramaphosa as a special envoy of President Zuma in this area of work. The Great Lakes region continues to be a cauldron of instability, denial of human rights, and ethnic cleansing, particularly in Burundi. We hope that the convening of the all-inclusive inter-Burundian dialogue by President Zuma and the mediation role that is being played by former President of Tanzania, Mr. Benjamin Mkapa, on behalf of the AU will bear fruit.
1 minute.
Fellow compatriots, let me then move to the department. In our recent engagement with the department, we asked the department to continue implementing the AG's report recommendations, such as the auditing of assets, moving away from leasing to property ownership, and the refurbishment of dilapidated properties that were used as chancelleries in the world. In conclusion, as I conclude, let me thank both the political principals and officials of this department for a harmonious working relationship with the committee. I also owe a deep debt of gratitude to the honorable members and the staff of this committee for exerting themselves so assiduously in our oversight work. Kongolose uyayisekela uyasisekela lesi sabelo semali uzimo achutubaze Africa inarha ilale ngiyathokoza.
Sithokoze. We now invite Honorable Mkhalapa.
Thank you, Chairperson. All protocol observed. South Africa's foreign policy has undergone a metamorphosis process since the democratic dispensation 2 decades ago. President Mandela declared that human rights will be a guiding principle of our foreign policy. The current government has veered off this principle. Our foreign policy is now perceived as inconsistent, flip-flopping, incoherent, lacking direction, and rather confused. A paradigm shift is essential if South Africa is to reclaim its global standing and respect as a leader in human rights, rule of law, respect for international law, and democracy. The fact that President Zuma was found to have violated the Constitution as ruled by the Constitutional Court ruling, and furthermore, the Supreme Court of Appeal's dismissal of the government application for leave to appeal on the al-Bashir matter has confirmed that South Africa is an embarrassment of its former self. The essence of diplomacy is premised on the promotion and protection of national interest. South Africa's national interests are defined broadly as an enhancement of a better Africa in a better world. This is abstract and not specific enough. There is a need to define in detailed terms our national interest. The question is, what is South Africa's bottom line? The NDP also highlight the need for a broader consensus and clarity on what constitutes our national interest. Foreign policy is by definition an extension of domestic policy. Our domestic imperative should always be prioritized in every international relations we engage upon. The National Development Plan further recommends a thorough analysis of our political and economic costs and benefits of South Africa's strategic representations actions abroad. The DA agrees. Also, National Treasury 2015 budget review calls for a rationalization and review of our missions abroad. The DA agrees again. The cost of maintaining the missions is unsustainable due to higher property costs and staff costs. South Africa's global footprint should not be determined by quantity of missions abroad, but by how we remain true and consistent to our principles and values, to the Constitution, and most significantly, the return on investment, economic, commercial interest. Alternative methods should be implemented, like the use of ICT and online services and clustering of missions. The last resort is the closing down of mission, Minister. Chairperson, allow me to address you on department programs. Program 1 of administration, the DA is concerned about the high level of vacancies, which will impact on the department's ability to fulfill its mandate, even though the budget has increased, but some post has to be frozen. Program 2, this is the main driver of the department international relations at a cost of 3.1 billion. The question we need to ask is, what is the value of our outgoing and incoming visits by both the heads of states and ministers? Is there alignment of our economic and domestic imperatives to our missions and bilateral relations? What is the impact on economic diplomacy, foreign direct investment, tourism, trade, and economic growth? We need to attach monetary value to the missions we have, as well as trips and visits that are undertaken, and not the quantity thereof. Program 3 of international cooperation, outcome 11 of the MTSF 2014 to 2019, envisage that government seeks to create a better South Africa and contribute to a better and safer Africa in a better world. This requires that South Africa to take leadership in terms of global issues. Furthermore, the NDP envisaged South Africa to play a greater leadership role in Africa by leading development and growth in Africa. This means that South Africa needs to speak up in multilateral forums like the UN, the AU, the SADC, when human rights abuses occur, when dictators oppress people, when democracy is under threat, and civil war and genocide, when elections are rigged, when dictators resist to vacate office and act with impunity, when third-termism, that is the cancer that will erode Africa and take Africa back into the dark ages. South Africa cannot just sit back and observe this dire situation. We must speak up and act and ensure that the UN resolution of responsibility to protect is always upheld. South Africa failed the people of Burundi by agreeing against the deployment of peacekeeping missions to Burundi. We welcome the ICC decision to conduct a preliminary investigation into Burundi. The South Africa's track record in United Nations and multilateral forums is shameful and inconsistent. Our vote schedules and resolutions we support are dubious and against our principles and values in our Constitution. This is highlighted by the damning Human Rights Council report on South Africa's human rights, which also condemns South Africa's commitments to upholding its obligation under international law. On the al-Bashir issue, where South Africa defied the domestic order, hence also being in contempt for the rule of law, and also defied an ICC request to surrender al-Bashir to The Hague for crimes against humanity. South Africa failed its principle of rules-based world order by defying the arrest of this wanted criminal, choosing to protect an individual and not the people of Sudan. The DA welcomes the Foreign Service Bill, which is long overdue, to professionalize and regulate our diplomatic corps and foreign service. The recent scandals involving our diplomats has dented brand South Africa. Our image is in disrepute, and this bill will address those shortcomings to ensure that our diplomatic corps and foreign service is no longer a dumping ground for ANC rejects, but a service for the country's national interest. The DA is concerned about program number 4 of public diplomacy. We always call for more funding to this program because of its significance, especially considering the unique role that this department plays. Program 5 of international transfers, we recognize our need to be part of multilateral forums and contribute. However, it should be done in line with candidacy diplomacy, ensuring influence and impact in these institutions, not just a blank check and membership for the sake of it. The DA is concerned about the audit outcomes of the department. For 2 consecutive years, the department received a qualified audit opinion with matters of emphasis, which include procurement, failure to follow procedures and rules, asset management, ICT, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and irregular
Wrap up,
expenditure.
1 minute.
The 3 critical issues raised by the Auditor General are very much concerning. In conclusion, South Africa needs an independent, value-driven foreign policy. The DA's freedom, fairness, and opportunity foreign policy envisage that South Africa as a leader of human rights foreign policy that ensure economic growth to create jobs, prioritize education and focus on economic diplomacy, and be at the forefront of observing international law and respect for rules of law. The DA will ensure that South Africa get back to human rights-based foreign policy and regain our global standing. The DA will bring about change that moves South Africa forward again. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mkhalapa. Honorable Paulson.
Thank you, Chairperson. The Economic Freedom Fighters rejects Budget Vote 6 of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. This Department of International Relations is mandated to work towards the realization of this country's international relations objectives, chief among which to ensure that the global community continues to view us as a credible partner for trade and cooperative partners in the leadership of global institutions. Our gateway towards achieving that goal would have to be the point of view of the continent within which we exist, which has a peculiar history requiring peculiar understanding and interventions. Our view is that our approach to international relations must also be pan-African if we are to be taken as serious global players. That approach to international relations would have to seek to make a decisive break with the repressive institutions governing global trade and relations as typified by the IMF and the World Bank. It was with this understanding that we welcomed the formation of the BRICS partnership, but it has now become clear that this partnership and the BRICS Bank does not offer that necessary departure from the framework of development designed by Western powers. Rather, this bank will be used by the corrupt cartel surrounding Mr. Zuma for personal enrichment. The capitalist world economy is that which is based on the continuance of the exploitation of the poor and the enrichment of the few. South Africa has to break from this trend if we are to ensure sustainable, self-perpetuating development. This department cannot do with a tiny allocation of only 5.8 billion rand for the 2016-2017 financial year. Chairperson, nothing demonstrates the pettiness and the foolishness of the Zuma administration more than its dumbing down of the African Renaissance and International Cooperation Fund, or ARF, which is ignored primarily because it is seen as a Mbeki creation. This fund has been allocated only 31,000 rand for this financial year. This makes it almost impossible for South Africa to make any meaningful strategic advances in Africa through the ARF. Sadly, our international relations seem to have been hijacked as a means towards satisfying the unquenchable corrupt desires of Mr. Zuma. We send our soldiers to African countries without any clear mandates, endangering their lives with no clear international relations gains for our country. Mr. Zuma's family is fully entrenched in businesses in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and he uses our standing to ensure that his family gets to benefit. The Inga hydroelectric project in the Congo is nothing more than a Zuma enrichment campaign. Our soldiers in the Sudan are under constant danger, unarmed and poorly supported. This also to ensure that Mr. Zuma and his family
1
and the
minute.
Guptas benefit from the vast oil resources of the Sudan. We also forced the Guptas on Lesotho, only for that country's brave leadership to eject the shameless individuals. Our foreign policy, instead of advancing our objectives as a nation, have been reduced to advancing the personal interest of Mr. Zuma, who stands out like a sore thumb in our country. We therefore reject this budget vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now call on Honorable Singh to take the debate forward.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister. I do not serve on this portfolio committee, and I represent Honorable Mwango, who is indisposed for today. But I thought for him asking me to do this on his behalf, make remarks, I must take advantage of this opportunity and just share some of my own relations with the Department of International Relations. Firstly, Chairperson, Honorable Minister, I'd like to place on record my appreciation to some of your officials in the department who have assisted me greatly when it comes to issues of repatriation and helping South African citizens abroad who've had difficulties. Two names come to mind, and I don't know if they are still in your department. One is Mr. Mbulelo, the head of consular services, and the other is Mr. Matsebe from your office. They have been extremely helpful in that regard. Also would like to thank the DG. Madam Minister, you mentioned the question about reduction in your budget and the number of missions that will have to be reduced. And judging from the trade figures that you gave us and the return on the investment, I just hope that Cabinet is not cutting its nose to spite its face. Because if there is a return on investments from those missions and ambassadors and embassies, then we need to seriously consider that they remain open. But I think we also got to look at the fact that there must be performance targets that must be set for all these embassies so that they meet set performance targets. I'm now going to move to some of the points that have been given to me by Honorable Mwango. And the first thing he says is that the AU and structures lack a peer review mechanism that functions properly. Dictatorship in Africa is a problem in countries like Burundi, Mali, Libya, Somalia, and South Sudan. The recent attacks in Kenya are concerning, and we send our condolences to the Kenyan government for the loss of their troops and people in the ongoing violence. Terrorism affects all in Africa, and an urgent solution must be sought. Economically, the number of missions that the SANDF are making must be cut down. We have to cut down on so-called symbolic missions and utilize this funding in a correct manner. Lesotho has been unstable for years, and South Africa must watch this closely. We must start at home first before sending bronze statues worth millions to Palestine. Piracy in Africa is moving south towards South Africa, and it is very important that South Africa arrests this phenomenon before it spirals out of control. The IFA believes that the government cannot afford to waste time in consolidating advantages offered, such as the trade pact with the European Union, or cementing relations with traditional friends. The IFP supports binational forums with the US and Germany and urges the extension of this process to other friendly trading partners. The IFP supports closer cooperation with other international and regional institutions such as the European Union, World Trade Organization, ACP, Commonwealth of Nations, United Nations, OAU, and SADC, and the non-aligned movement. The IFP further values prudence in foreign relations, giving full recognition to the complexity
1 minute.
of managing conflicting claims in international life. Moreover, the IFP recognizes that the international community remains, in spite of the ending of the Cold War, divided into blocks of states which have been formed on the joint basis of tradition, perceived interests, geographical location, and practical experience. We believe that prudence dictates the continuing adherence to traditional allies and friends. Finally, we believe that mutual interest, shared historical experience, and the search for a new basis for international peace, security, and justice must be found. The IFP supports this budget vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Singh. Honorable Shaikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Let me start off by saying, Honorable Chairperson, I have seen today the highest level of hypocrisy in this House. And let me tell you why. We talk about human rights violations in Burundi, but we fail deliberately to talk about human rights violations in Palestine and in the Middle East. We have been oppressed for hundreds of years. And when you now fail to oppress the people of South Africa, you have now gone to oppress the people of Palestine by supporting Israel, knowing fully well that Israel is occupying territory that does not belong to them, and continue to oppress and harm the people of Palestine, ignoring all requests throughout the country to find a peaceful solution. And I want to add, Chairperson, shame on those members of the Democratic Alliance who choose to be members of the Democratic Alliance and choose to harm and oppress the people in Palestine. And I want to say, Islam is a very peaceful religion, calls for unity, and the very people that are part of the Democratic Alliance choose to oppress its own people, and they continue to do that.
Please wait. Honorable members. Honorable Kalyan. Honorable Kalyan, it's your turn.
Madam, may I address you on a point of order
Yes.
in respect of the rule, which is relevance of the subject matter to be discussed. We are debating vote 6, the budget vote, not Islam and religion.
Honorable members, that is a point of debate that can be continued. Continue, Honorable Shaim.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. We call on all law-abiding South Africans to reject the Democratic Alliance because they do not have objectivity. They know and understand how to oppress and continue to oppress the people of this world. Honorable Chairperson, the department has been allocated close to 5.89 billion to execute its mandate, which represents a real 15.16% decrease of almost 622 million.
Order.
This reduction is in keeping with the need for financial austerity in these difficult economic times, and accordingly, we approve of it. We also commend the department for the manner in which it plans to allocate the funds available amongst its programs, and note with approval the reduction in monies allocated to employee remuneration. The NFP also believes that we should be relooking at the high cost of leasing premises in other countries and consider the option of purchasing properties. We would also like to see the department take advantage of the government take advantage of our diplomatic relations and the role we play internationally, in Africa and in SADC particularly. And Honorable Chairperson, let me remind,
On a point of order,
our
Chairperson.
relationship and involvement in the SADC
Honorable-
region is already bearing fruit.
There's a member behind you, honorable member. Can I address
Chairperson.
it? Honorable member.
This honorable member from the EFF has just walked up to me, sweared me, and called me youth. Yes, I've got witnesses. I never.
Honorable members. Honorable Paulson. Honorable Paulson. Honorable members.
He must withdraw.
He has used the worst
Honorable
profanity,
members.
Chairperson.
Honorable
I
Kellyan.
can't even believe from
Honorable
a person that
Kellyan.
thinks they are decent.
It's very difficult. I heard you, honorable member. He came to you and
Must
sweat on
withdraw.
you. Can I ask the chief whips of both, the whips that are responsible for both parties, to please look at that? Because from where I am sitting, honorable member, from where I am sitting, I am unable to hear all the altercations that take place there. So can you allow the whips to please do that, and in writing, write it to the Rules Committee to deal with it. Please, let me say
Madam
that.
Chair.
I didn't hear anything.
Madam Chair, it was very clear that the Honourable Paulson just used an unacceptable word in the House. It was very clear to everybody.
What is it, honorable member?
Ma'am,
Order! Honorable Paulson, please, order. Honorable member, can I? Oh, no. Can you please wait? to him. You heard it. Honorable members, let me hear you.
Madam Chair, we heard quite clearly that the Honourable Paulson has just used the K word in this House, which is completely unacceptable,
Two,
utterly unacceptable. And I'd ask that you take action.
okay?
Order, Chair. Wait. Honorable Chair.
No, you had other people before you. That's why I went to him. I'll go to Honorable Pando and then come back to Kellyanne and yourself. Honorable Pando?
Chairperson, I have been observing the two members from here, and they've been engaged in an altercation for some time. There was a period during which the Honorable Paulser kept quiet, and the Honorable member sitting at the back, Honorable Kasim, made a comment which caused Honorable Paulson to rise.
Please
So it would
allow
seem
me,
to me
honorable members.
that
yes.
you are correct in your ruling, that a formal submission must be made, and the matter must be properly canvassed and a ruling be made following that. Because it is not but one. Both were involved. I was observing quite closely. Honorable Paulson sat down and was quiet, and the honorable member said something which caused Honorable Paulson to stand up. All of that needs to be looked at. Our members must learn to behave properly in the House, and I think there must be a proper investigation of what occurred. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members, I think I should close it at this. I'm unable to hear what they were saying, but as I said, please let us uphold the decorum of the House. And such altercations really diminish the House into something very, I don't know what it is. But I still repeat, can we have the whips of both parties doing something about this and bring it to the correct fora to be looked into? That is incorrect, honorable members. What you are doing in front of our guests is not correct. And the decorum is really belittled. Continue, you have less than 1 minute.
Thank you, Chair. The interpretation of the word is a non-believer, and surely you can't be a believer if you're oppressing your own people. Anyway, the National Freedom Party, Honorable Chair, I was just alluding to the effect of our involvement in the SADC and the benefits that it has had for South Africa. You would note that the NHI, we've been having great difficulty in attracting GPs, and some political parties really don't support the NHI. But I must tell you, through our intervention and involvement in SADC, Mauritius has offered us 400 GPs in order to roll out our the NHI. So it's actually, there are great benefits. We call on government.
Thank you very much.
Is it?
The time is now gone.
The National Freedom Party supports this project. Thank you.
I now order honorable members. You have just observed what should not be happening in this House. Can we remind ourselves why we are here? Please, honorable members. Can I now invite the Honorable Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Honorable Mfeketo, to take the debate forward.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, Honorable Members, Your Excellency, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, and representatives of international organizations, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On the 26th of April, 2016, history was made in Ramallah, Palestine, when the Palestinians celebrated our freedom by unveiling a 6-meter statue of the world icon, our very own president of a democratic South Africa. As President Mandela himself said, our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians. The actual gesture of unity between the city of Johannesburg and the city of Ramallah is a symbolic testimony that we will not rest until Palestine is free. We thank Mayors Pax Tau and Musa Hadid, respectively, as well as President Abbas for honoring this event. We note the work by President Zuma's special envoys, led by former Minister Dr. Zola Skweyiya and former Deputy Minister Mr. Aziz Pahat. We believe as South Africa that an all-inclusive solution to the Israel and Palestinian conflict will stabilize the Middle East region. We have taken note of Palestine's accession to the Rome Statutes and call upon the Office of the Prosecutor of the ICC to speedily initiate investigations in the situation in Palestine and Israel. The delay in opening investigations illustrates the double standards in the practice of the ICC that the AU has complained of. We call on the Permanent Five of the United Nations Security Council to see the urgent solution of the Israel-Palestinian matter as a major catalyst to a peaceful Middle East region. From Juba to Colombo, people believe and trust in South Africa's ability to contribute in their peace effort. Our Deputy President, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa's work in Sri Lanka and South Sudan is testament of this. Honorable Chairperson, the world of foreign policy is a charged and contested one. Our foreign policy correctly identifies Asia and the African continent as pivotal poles for growth and human development. Since the attainment of our hard-fought democracy, South Africa's trade and investment relations with various countries in Asia and the Middle East have grown considerably and continue to do so. In 1994, our trade with Asia and the Middle East combined was approximately 45 billion rands. And through the expansion and hard work of our missions abroad, this has increased to approximately 760 billion rands for Asia and 116 billion rands with the Middle East in 2015. South Africa has seen an increase in tourist arrivals from this region, leading to the creation of many job opportunities. Honorable members, our diplomatic footprints in these regions has strategically increased from 7 missions in 1994, as the minister said earlier, to 32 missions in 2016. The increase in diplomatic representation is therefore directly related to the enhanced political relations and excellent growth in our trade and investment cooperation with identified countries in the region. We are encouraged by the lifting of nuclear-related sanctions against Iran in early 2016, because this was a result of Ubuntu diplomacy in action. The successful state visit by our President, President Zuma, to Iran last week has reaffirmed our commitment to deepen political and economic relations. This is exemplified by a number of bilateral agreements signed. We have created a specialized committee to implement these agreements, with concrete action plans. Prior to this, President Zuma had a similar successful visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. Ladies and gentlemen, our ocean economy has a vast untapped potential. Our membership of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, that we call IORA, and our leadership role as deputy chair from 2015 to 2016, and as incoming chair from next year, 2017 to 2019, creates a plethora of economic opportunities and skills development. And this is in line with the objectives of our own Operation Pakisa. Honorable Chairperson, we are satisfied with the progress South Africa has made in the arena of international relations. We will continue to utilize our foreign policy to contribute towards a betterment of the continent. Just like we said about Palestine, we will never be free until the people of Western Sahara are free. We will, and we believe that this will build a truly humanitarian country, a truly prosperous continent, and a truly peaceful world where dignity is its essence. I thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. We now invite Honorable Kenya.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members of the House, distinguished guests, and fellow South Africans. Greetings to you all in the name of the oldest, most inclusive and progressive liberation movement and a leading political party in the continent, the African National Congress. The African National Congress supports this budget.
Honorable members.
The African National Congress supports this budget vote for the Department of International Relations and Cooperation to enable the department to
Honorable
continue.
members, I can't hear the speaker next to me. If you want to take your debates, please take them somewhere. Continue.
The African National Congress supports this budget vote for the Department of International Relations and Cooperation to enable the department to continue its contribution to a better Africa for a better world. Honorable members and Chairperson, our liberation struggle heroes, Comrades O.R. Tambo and Johnny McCartney, and later all those the ANC deployed to handle foreign affairs, were and are inspired by the traditions of internationalism and solidarity. And the ANC has sought to give life to these values ever since. And these are the central tenets of our foreign policy. Furthermore, Chapter 7 of the National Development Plan envisioned a South Africa with an economy that is globally competitive and also a leading and influential member of the international community. South Africa is therefore expected to contribute meaningfully to the global objectives of sustainable development, democracy, the rule of law, human rights, peace and stability. Honorable members, DECO has done a sterling job of pursuing these objectives, and we are convinced and assured that even within the context of our current economic climate, that has resulted in the reduction of the budget from 6.5 billion rand to 5.8 billion rand, they will continue delivering the policy objectives of the ANC government despite budget cuts. And as envisaged by the NTP, the department will forge ahead to, I quote, establish strategic partnerships among individual partners based on strategic political and economic priorities, close quote. Based on this, South Africa has ensured that it maintains a consistent presence in all relevant regions of the world to achieve our foreign policy objectives and priorities. Part of this strategy has been to give priority to maintaining relations with developed countries of the North as one of the pillars of South Africa's foreign policy, as well as South-South relations. In this regard, South Africa participated in trilateral partnerships with some countries of the North in support of peace and development on the African continent. Our bilateral relationship with North America and the United States in particular is key to us. In this regard, South Africa will continue to explore ways of deepening the political relations between South Africa and the United States, our third largest trading partner. The department plans to use the United States African Growth and Opportunity Act as a platform for industrialization and regional integration. AGOA has been extended by President Obama until 2025. The legislation opens up the US market for qualifying sub-Saharan countries based on conditions similar to those espoused by the ANC government, such as rule of law and fair labor practices. The foresight of the ANC government can therefore not be mistaken as we deliver for our people. This agreement is key as 98% of South Africa's exports enter the United States as duty and quota-free. The relations between these two countries are mutually beneficial, as the US is a significant market for us, whilst we are their biggest market in Africa. Through its foreign assistance programs that is aligned to our domestic priorities, the US lends us much needed support. Indeed, our relationship with the United States is complex, but I commend the department for using our bilateral relations to enhance the development of the African continent. Our relationship with North America also serves the purpose of contributing to the ending of the plight of the people of Cuba. Honorable members, strengthening the African agenda and regional integration are key priorities to our foreign policy. The ANC believes strongly that charity begins at home, and this is informed by our practical experience of being the oldest liberation movement in the continent, whose membership in the height of colonialism extended beyond the physical boundaries of South Africa. Affirming the needs and unity of the continent as a priority is consistent with the African Union's Agenda 2063, which is about Africa we want to build in the future. Its aspirations reflect a collective desire to uplift the continent from underdevelopment and instability. The department has a budget of 3.7 billion rand to facilitate the rationalization of regional economic communities and move towards free trade zones, revitalizing the NEPAD on infrastructure development and the promotion of good governance through African peer review mechanism. Honorable members, as solidarity features as a strong element of South Africa's internationalism, our presidents, since our democratic elections in 1994, have always emphasized our solidarity with those countries that we remain eternally grateful to their support and those countries that find themselves in similar challenging positions, as we were during the trying times under apartheid and colonialism. Our country, through AU and Caribbean community, has endeavored to strengthen cooperation between African and the African diaspora. This includes developing common positions on global issues. Our solidarity is steeped in the brotherhood of men, that is people, and Ubuntu, one of these countries that stood by us and contributed immensely in our struggle for democracy is Cuba. It is therefore a cause for celebration and heartwarming to witness the recent events that saw the first African-American president of the United States of America, President Obama, visiting Cuba on an official state visit for the first time by a sitting US president in 85 years. Masquabe. This promises to end successive US administration's policy of economic sanctions and diplomatic isolations. Progress with ending economic sanctions is largely dependent on vote by the US Congress for approval. As stated by the Honorable President Zuma, we will remain firm in our call for the unconditional lifting of the economic embargo against Cuba and the return of Guantanamo Bay, which are some of the key issues that are still outstanding despite the thawing of previously frosty relations between the two countries. We do hope that the United States will learn too from our own experience when Walvis Bay was returned back to Namibia to ensure we remain in peace with our neighbors and heeding the old saying that, I quote, return Caesar what belongs to him, close quote. Furthermore, during the 69th United States General Assembly, a vote was held on a resolution condemning the decades-long embargo. This was the 23rd time that such a vote has been held in the General Assembly.
Thank you, Honorable Kenya. Your time has expired.
Thank you very much. ANC supports the bill. Thank you.
Honorable Duckley.
Thank you, Chair. Honourable Minister and Deputy Ministers, the department which carries out its mandate to advance South Africa's national interest in an unpredictable external environment operates on a shoestring budget year after year, and with further cuts to contend with this year, plus foreign currency exchange fluctuations, operations abroad will be taking strain. The ACDP supports the prioritizing of economic diplomacy given its importance in promoting our value-added exports and attracting foreign direct investment. We are concerned, however, that this budget will not provide adequately for the needs of missions, including the upskilling of diplomats and the tools of economic diplomacy. At the same time, we acknowledge that cost-cutting is a necessary response to a clear message from the electorate. We therefore support all efforts to do what has to be done and more with less. Honourable Minister, the ACDP would just like to say up front that although President Zuma has said a free Palestine does not mean the non-existence of Israel, there is no recognition of the real challenges Israel faces in this regard. President Mandela did not just refer to Palestinian freedom, but also to the right of Israel to exist, and without secure borders, this is highly unlikely. While South Africa focuses on Africa and regional economics and attaches great importance to our membership of BRICS with the sharing of technical expertise, knowledge and experience, we commend the department's efforts to nurture the many other important international relations. The ACDP notes, for example, that through Japanese funding and sending of experts and volunteers to 21 countries in Africa, rice production in sub-Saharan Africa has substantially increased. We note too that the number of Japanese companies based in South Africa has increased, creating more than 150,000 job opportunities. The ACDP welcomes partnerships in the area of education as well and commends African Business Education Initiative for Youth, which is providing opportunities for 1,000 young African men and women to study master's courses at Japanese universities and to gain work experience through internships at Japanese companies in order to benefit business and job creation back home. With increasing trade and investment opportunities between South Africa and Nigeria in various sectors, including the automotive industry, and the fact that over 120 South African businesses currently operate there, and with both countries currently serving as members of the African Union Peace and Security Council, the ACDP would like to see intensified consultations and the development of common positions on African peace and security concerns, including Boko Haram, the Islamic extremism in Nigeria, Mali, Algeria, and other states from Mauritania in the west to Somalia in the east. The ACDP is pleased that eventually, after intense negotiations with the US, finally renewed South Africa's Africa Growth and Opportunity Act status. Despite reservations from some critics, the deal is an important one for the South African economy, as AGOA secures tens of thousands of local jobs and grants businesses continued access to US markets.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Duckley. Honorable Landos, the Deputy Minister for International Relations and Cooperation.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Members, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, and representatives of international organizations, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. South Africa's foreign policy is premised on the ideals of the Freedom Charter and the principles and values of the 1996 Constitution. As we celebrate the existence of the Freedom Charter and the 20th anniversary of the Constitution this year, we recommit ourselves to the promotion and protection of human rights in the world. In its 1994 discussion document titled Foreign Policy Perspective in a Democratic South Africa, the ANC declared the centrality of human rights in our foreign policy. Informed by our independent and principle-based foreign policy, we have continued to campaign for the promotion and protection of human rights in the world. In March this year, we participated in the high-level segment of the 31st session of the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva, during which our position on human rights issues was advanced, and I had the privilege and honor of attending that session. We utilized the occasion to highlight the plight of the people of Palestine and Western Sahara, who are still yearning for freedom and independence. We did so because their struggles are legitimate, and we have a responsibility to support them in their quest for freedom, justice, and human rights, and in their noble quest to exist as independent sovereign states. Honorable members, Honorable Chairperson, the handshake between President Raul Castro of Cuba and President Barack Obama of the United States of America at the funeral of the late President Nelson Mandela was a watershed moment in Cuban-American relations. Like the peace-loving people of Palestine and Western Sahara, the people of Cuba are not yet free. We certainly welcome and applaud the restoration of diplomatic ties between Cuba and the USA. However, it is important that the revived diplomatic channels between Havana and Washington are utilized to accelerate the total lifting of the economic embargo against Cuba and the return of Guantanamo Bay to its rightful owners, the people and government of Cuba. Our strong ties with the Cubans dates back to the decades of Cuba's solidarity with the oppressed people of the global South and its contribution in defeating colonialism in Africa and other parts of the world. This year, we have scheduled a series of events to celebrate the 20th anniversary of our formal bilateral cooperation with Cuba. These events will be hosted in both South Africa and Cuba. Our economic, political, cultural, sporting, and trade relations with Latin America have grown since the dawn of our democracy. We have also witnessed an increase in tourism flows to our country from this region. Honorable members, Honorable Chair, it must be stated that our relations with countries in both the Americas and Europe are based on certain identified pillars. These pillars are 1, high-level political dialogue, 2, trade and tourism, 3, investment, industrialization, and skills development, and 4, development cooperation. It must be stressed that while we increased our focus on other economic growth poles in the world, Europe remains a key strategic partner from the global north. This region accounted for 27.3% of South Africa's total global trade in 2015, which translated into a 1.4% increase compared to 2014. We will therefore continue deepening our mutually beneficial cooperation with countries of the global north. Honorable Chairperson, important highlights for 2015 include our President's visit to Germany in November 2015 and our Deputy President's visit to Sweden in October 2015. These visits culminated in the renewed commitments for cooperation in the areas of education and training by both Germany and Sweden. Moreover, important cooperation agreements in the areas of environmental cooperation and water and sanitation were concluded with Sweden. Our focus will be on the implementation of these agreements during the current financial year. With regard to America, as has been stated by other honorable members, we were pleased to have resolved the outstanding issues related to the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA, and we want to use this opportunity to commend the efforts of the Honorable Minister Rob Davies and the rest of the team for achieving this. This will enable us to work towards increasing exports of South African agricultural products and other value-added products to the vast US market. Honorable Chair, we are conscious of the importance of communicating these milestones and our planned future engagements to our domestic and foreign audiences. The implementation of our public diplomacy strategies have increased public access to the department's executive, enriched the public understanding of South Africa's international engagements, and informed the youth about our career opportunities. As you may be aware, we have reintroduced the Diplomatic Cadet Program for our youth who aspire to serve our country as diplomats in the future. This program is dedicated to South Africa's renowned diplomat, the late Johnny Makatini. The Johnny Makatini Ubuntu Diplomatic Corps Cadet Program is aimed at providing the department with a pool of skilled and well-equipped junior diplomats. Honorable Chair, I want to go back just briefly to the question of the Western Sahara. Recently, the UN Security Council adopted a resolution, and we want to say from this podium that we welcome the adoption of that resolution, which seeks to extend for another year its peacekeeping mission, MINUSO, in Western Sahara. The Security Council also demanded the urgent restoration of its full functionality after Morocco expelled its international civilian staff. However, we want to say that this resolution, whilst we welcome it, does not go far enough and should have extended the recognition of the Sahrawi people and their government. I also want to use this opportunity to just respond to the Honorable Mokhalapa and his use of the word ANC cadres in our diplomatic missions. Perhaps the Honorable Mokhalapa is unaware of the fact that the Honorable Tony Leon, leader of the Democratic Alliance, the Honorable Sandra Botha, DA Member of Parliament, the Honorable Sheila Camera, DA Member of Parliament and respected one, the Honorable Douglas Giberson, former Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance, was also deployed in our missions abroad. And so when he takes that position that he has done, he needs to be mindful of the four fingers pointed back at himself and his own party. Honorable Chairperson, I want to reiterate the point raised by the Honorable Deputy Minister Mfeketo with regard to Israel and the International Criminal Court. We want to say from this podium that every day that passes without the prosecutor's office in the International Criminal Court bringing charges against Benjamin Netanyahu and other members of the Israeli government who were responsible for the deaths and destruction brought upon the people of Gaza, strengthens our arm when we argue for our withdrawal from the ICC. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member L.T. Landers. I will now call upon Honorable LKB Mpumlwana.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members, and Honorable Diplomats, distinguished guests, and Honorable South Africans. Bodan. This budget is deservedly supported by ANC. With His Excellency, the President leading the planning team, and the Minister Maite Nkwana Mashabane, the implementing team, they deserve the whole country's respect and praise. South Africa's foreign policy is today on an upward march, adapting and innovating from frontier to frontier, beginning in our SADC neighborhood, across the entire Africa for the implementation of the African agenda, into the south to strengthen our cooperation there, to the north, where our partners value a relationship with us, and in multilateral organization where South Africa's independent voice continue to be heard. It is through the leadership of these dedicated son and daughter of South Africa, as well as the selfless efforts of the entire department, that South Africa is today an equal among equals and whose opinion is always respected. Let all those who have ears hear, those who have eyes see. The African continent remains central to our South African foreign policy, and this thrust forms the basis for our cooperation, partnership, and engagement of all over the world. Hosting The African Union Summit in June 2015 was yet another reaffirmation that Africa's prosperity is key to our foreign policy. The summit set out measures for roll out
Order.
of Agenda 2063 as a continental vision for Africa we all want. In October to November 2015, we hosted the Amani Africa 2 field training to test the full operational capability of African capacity for immediate response to crisis, with a view to launch the African Standby Force. There is an urgent need for such a force today. We contributed to efforts which culminated in the launch of COMESA, East African Community, SADC, Tripartite Free Trade Area in June 2015 in Egypt. This tripartite FTA integrates markets of 26 countries with a population of 632 million, which is 57% of Africa's population. This milestone builds momentum towards successful conclusion of the Continental Free Trade Area negotiations due by 2017. This is a step which will ensure that Africa trades more and more with itself. Beyond our continent, South Africa remains engaged with the countries of the South and the East to advance issues of common interest and mutual benefit in agenda of developing nations. We are part of BRICS. BRICS serves as a catalyst to promote the African Union Regional Integration Program, as well as related continental infrastructure programs. President Zuma was mandated in 2012 by AU leadership to support and pursue the creation of BRICS Bank. He subsequently hosted the first BRICS Outreach Summit in 2013, together with AU leadership, to discuss infrastructure development. He was then designated by AU as a nodal point between BRICS and African leaders. At the 6th BRICS Summit, South Africa was designated to host the African Center for the new BRICS Development Bank. However, BRICS Bank remains the elephant in the room. Designed to service more than 2/3 of the world population, it is a threat. It is seen as a threat to world capitalists. Many attempts are being made by its enemies to destabilize or change the regime that are part of BRICS. In December 2015, South Africa hosted the second Forum for China-Africa Cooperation Summit in order to further strengthen the friendly cooperation between China and Africa under the new circumstances, jointly meet the challenge of economic globalization and promote common development agenda. We participated in the India-Africa Summit to pursue the collective goal of utilizing cooperative partnership to advance our African interest and interests of Global South. We did so consciously of the development in global arena, including the need for concerted efforts to work towards realization of these SDGs. It is this ANC government that has so brilliantly and honorably represented South Africa in the world. It is only the ANC that is capable of doing this.
Order.
I call upon the people of South Africa to please come in their numbers and vote ANC in the local
Honorable
elections.
members, don't drown the speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member Mpumlwana. The next speaker on the list is Honorable Member S.V. Kalien. Thank you.
House Chairperson, I would like to start off today by paying tribute to a former member of this House, Dean Smuts. She was a fine lady and an outstanding parliamentarian, a fierce defender of the Constitution and human rights. May her soul rest in peace. Madam Chair, we have heard at great length that DIRCO derives its responsibility from the Constitution of South Africa and the National Development Plan, which sees South Africa promoting and contributing to sustainable development, democracy, the rule of law, human rights, peace, and security. With the proudly acclaimed global footprint of 126 missions worldwide, I submit, Madam Chair, that the ministers and its ambassadors at our missions abroad are finding it infinitely embarrassing to defend South Africa's policies in the light of the Constitutional Court's finding that the President of South Africa, the so-called father of the nation, violated the Constitution. Much is made of South Africa's national key interests, which derives from the values enshrined in our Constitution. The state is the prime custodian of constitutional responsibility. So when a head of state violates this very Constitution for self-gain, not only is it going against national interest, but it compromises our country on the world platform. It is quite shameful that the crew on the other side still supports President Zuma. We have nothing to be proud of. DIRCO recently won an award from Universum, where it was stated that it's the third best employer. Now, is this an achievement? I don't think so. The real reason why many employees love working for DIRCO is because DIRCO's internal checks and balances has to be the worst in the world, and where failure, lying, and cheating lands you a job as an ambassador. Let's talk a little bit about Chris Ngobo. He was a former police officer. He consistently lied about having a matric certificate. He faced a disciplinary inquiry. He resigned before the DC, could happen, but lo and behold, he's the ambassador to Mali. No matric, on his way to Mali. The Portfolio Committee, in its BRRR report in 2014, observed that some diplomats have been tasked with administrative responsibilities and professional experience. Now, given this observation in 2014, is the appointment of Ngobo just plain stupidity on the part of DIRCO, or a carefully orchestrated plan to self-destruct? Let's take the so-called Dr. Peko, ambassador to Japan, who claims to have a doctorate. The doctorate was obtained 4 years after a university which issues fake degrees closed. She remains ambassador to Japan. Incidentally, President Zuma knew of the fake degree when she was the ambassador to Canada. Instead of recalling her, he sent her to Japan. Let's not forget Bruce Kolane, who landed a diplomatic posting in the Netherlands. He was the fall guy in the Gupta skate, in case you're wondering who I'm talking about. I could go on and on, but time is not on my side. So no wonder DIRCO is a
1
great
minute
place
left.
to work for. If you cheat and you lie, you only have to say sorry, and you still keep to get your job. I can't believe that my 5 minutes have gone by, but I would like to quickly talk to the Honorable Sheikh Imam. You should be ashamed of your behavior, Imam.
Order,
Islam
honorable
advocates
members.
peace, but you today here incited hate and anger. And the ANC, you are so hypocritical. When it comes to the human rights in Zimbabwe, what did you say when the DA raised it? You say, no, self-determination. So why don't you allow Israel and Palestine to self-determine? Why are you so hypocritical supporting BDS? When we had sanctions in South Africa, how did we suffer? You are so hypocritical in some of the things that you do. South Africa's mission statement proclaims that South Africa is regarded as a champion for the
Honourable
protection and
member, your
promotion of
time has
human rights.
expired.
Deal with that and work it out in the right way
Order.
instead of being so
Order,
prejudiced.
honourable member. Thank you, honourable member Kellyan. Thank you. I will now call upon honourable member B.A. Khatebe.
Honorable Chairperson, ministers and deputy ministers, members of this august house, the stakeholders of DERCO in the public gallery, and the DG and his entourage, good morning. Chairperson, this debate takes place on the month of May, which is the Africa Month, where we will be celebrating the 53rd anniversary of the formation of the OOU, which was the precursor of the African Union. The African Union has come a long way in uniting the political and economic agenda of the African continent, as envisioned by its founders. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah maintained that the departing colonialists inflicted the most harm in Africa by leaving it divided into the states which had no possibility of economic development. He agitated the African states to integrate economically and beneficiate their natural resources like minerals and agricultural products for the benefit of its people. Today, Africa has an achievable socio-economic political program, which is the AU Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. In this speech, I'll concentrate on Program 1 and 2, which are widely covered by Aspirations 1 and 7 of Agenda 2063. The aspiration number 1 calls for a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development, which will lead to the eradication of poverty in one generation. And aspiration 7 calls for Africa, which is a strong, united, influential global player and partner. Chairperson, with this AU background, the ANC-led government has pursued an Afrocentric foreign policy based on the NDP, which aims for the eradication of poverty, increase employment, and reduce inequality by providing a vision for achieving a radical socio-economic transition by 2030. This will be attained by having a South Africa which commands a global competitive economy, which actively promotes and contributes to a sustainable development, democracy, the rule of law, human rights, peace, and security. Chairperson, this budget vote comes at a time when the World Bank predicts a sluggish world economic growth of 2.9% in 2016. This has also not spared South Africa, because the same prediction is saying that South Africa is only going to grow by 0.7% in 2016. Chairperson, during his budget speech, the Minister of Finance called for belt tightening for all state departments. The budget of DERCO has been decreased from 6.5 billion in 2015 to 5.8 billion in 2016. With this decline, the department will still continue to provide quality services because Program 1, which is the administration, has its allocation increased from 1.38 billion in 2015 to 1.46 billion in 2016. This program strategic objective is to achieve an efficient, effective, and economically and fully capacitated department. Its sub-program of diplomatic training, research and development has its allocation increased from 68.7 million in 2015 to 85 million in 2016. This sub-program will produce research papers on a number of key geostatic issues. Chairperson, the economic diplomacy is the mantra of the department. That's why it forms part of the diplomatic training, which is focused in providing guidance to government and business sector on economic development and markets, pursuing market access for South Africa products, attracting investment and tourism, removing barriers to trade and supporting the development of larger markets in Africa. It also enhances competitiveness competitiveness of South African goods and services in major global markets. In the current financial year, DERCO will be hosting 112 trade and investment seminars. In the current year, DERCO will be having 126 engagements with the chambers of commerce. In the current year, DERCO will be having 86 meetings with high-level potential investors and 67 tourism promoting events. Thus, South Africa today is in the top 10 of the tourism destination market in the world. It is not by surprise. It is because of this hard work which is done by this department. Chair, again, that the Minister Patel said in his budget vote last week that South Africa, for the first time, reached the target of exporting 1 trillion goods out of South Africa, 1 trillion goods worth of goods out of South Africa. It is because of these trade seminars which this department is holding regularly. What were the benefits of this? When you look at this, Chair, there is a clear annual performance plans that DERCO will continue to attract high-quality FDI. In March this year, the Ford company has announced an investment of 2.5 billion rand in its Pretoria plant, which will lead to the creation of 1,200 jobs. This investment is part of the total investment from 2013 to 2015 in the auto industry, which translates to 50 billion rand. This work and this foreign direct investment which is coming to South Africa is because of the brilliant work which is done by men and women in DERCO. Apart from this investment, Chair, the very same department has led the South African government as the initiator of foreign policy to the new economies, that is the green, blue, and knowledge economies. South Africa has continued to attract quality investments in this. For example, in the renewable energy sector, it has attracted more than 100 billion euros for the EU. This translates to about 1.5 billion rands worth of investment. That's why when we speak about the sub-Saharan Africa, South Africa remains one of the key countries where there's a high level of renewable energy investment. And the new development bank, in which we participate in, the Godapon, has approved this year a total investment of 188 billion US dollars for ESCOM in the renewable energy sector. This can only be done if there is coordination, there's a department which is coordinating all the other departments and focus them in a particular area. In the knowledge economy, there were also successes around that. I'll make an example. It's very fortunate that Comrade Naledi is here. She Comrade Naledi Pando. Yeah, Comrade. What is critical here?
Honorable Member Pando.
What is critical here is that we'll take in the knowledge economy. There's this mega project of the world, which is known as the Square Kilometer Array Telescope. South Africa is one of the countries which is hosting that. The total investment in that area for London, South Africa, and Australia, there's a total investment of 113 million pounds, which has been invested on that. But what was critical here is that because South Africa itself was the product of international solidarity, when this Square Kilometer Array project came to South Africa didn't monopolize that. Instead, it invited the scientists from the African continent, from Ghana, Madagascar, Mauritius, Botswana, Namibia. They are all here. They are doing wonderful research there in the Northern Cape. That's why the head of this machine lab said that it was surprising that the African scientists are in the cutting edge of knowledge economy, thanks to the work done by the South African government. Forward. What is also very important around that, an independent research unit, which is Ernst & Young, confirms that in their study that South Africa continues to lead Africa in foreign direct investment.
Honorable Member, 1 minute left.
Because of the diplomacy of Ubuntu, South Africa continues to involve other African countries in the major projects like SCA. But I cannot leave this debate without responding to few issues. First of all, Honorable Mkhalapa, when coming to the issue of third-termism, I think South Africa cannot go and tell the citizens of the other countries what they must do. If it is the decision of those countries through a proper process, we must respect them. You go to United Kingdom now. There's more than 3 terms those prime ministers can serve. You go to Germany, they can serve more than 3 terms because it was the decision of their citizens that there can be no term limit. So South Africa cannot go and impose itself in the other countries. But what is also very, very important here is that, Honorable Paulson, I think the issue of knowledge is very important. The 31 million, which you refer to on ARF,
Honorable
on
member,
the ARF,
your time has expired.
is having 1 billion. which is
Order,
sustainable.
Honorable Member
The
Paulson.
ANC supports this budget.
Honorable Member Paulson, screaming in the House disturbs the decorum of the House. Order. Thank you very much. Honorable Member Khatebe. Honorable members, I will now call upon the Honorable Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. I don't just give them a sponsor.
We should have extra minutes. Your Excellencies, honorable members, let me take this opportunity to thank our 2 deputies, Mfeketo and Landers, Honorable Chairperson Masango, honorable ministers present here, and also say that listening to you as always, there is no disagreement, but for some opposition members, it is important just to make a lot of noise so that we can be paid for having done that. But the truth is known. If you were to start, if you can start with Honorable Kalyan, if there's a department of 2,000 people, and if you make mistakes and we make them public and we punish them accordingly, you say is the worst employer. South Africa has always been an insular country because of apartheid. People prefer to stay at home. So you have to persuade them to work outside the country. It is the first time in my life that I had a female honorable member of parliament defending apartheid and sanctions. Never had. But I forgive you. Having said that, talking about
Order.
the ICC, I attended for the first time this year the Assembly of State Parties. Lo and behold, of the 122 members, only 10 ministers attended, and they were all from Africa. Not even the host country of Netherlands attended. This is supposed to be very important meeting. So when there's no respect whatsoever for the ICC, that's why people turned up and start thinking, maybe this is ACC and not ICC, because there are still contradictions of articles of the Rome Statutes which have not been dealt with. Even as we were inviting, on behalf of the African Union asked to host the AU summit. But when you go to the ASP to say, let's deal with these contradictions, they don't come to the meeting. They really don't care. The noise you are making here, they really appreciate, because they don't even dare come. They sent third secretary to the meeting. I'm sure they show because you'll do their bidding here. So that's very, very unfortunate. To also say that we've done away with African Renaissance, we are now on another path. It's amazing that
Order.
African Renaissance had moved to the
Order,
African
honorable members.
agenda.
Order.
African agenda or Agenda 2063 is derived from African Renaissance, is a forebearer of I will sleep because I work very, very hard. I work 24 hours. IFP members, thank you very much for your appreciation of the work we do outside this country. Same goes to Honorable Dudley and all those who make positive contribution to this debate. The international arena is a contested arena. There's no way you can do it by Twitter. You are going to show face and let people see you and engage with them, and that's how things are done. So
Order.
we cannot be the only ones who cut missions. By the way, talking about the cutting of the budget, take into consideration the fluctuation of the rand, that it has cut a whole lot of money from the budget of the department. So we are now saying to South Africans,
Order, honorable members.
let us take all this into consideration so that indeed, as Honorable Singh has said, let us not end up cutting our faces to spite, cutting our noses to spite our faces. There are a lot of benefits derived from South Africa's participation outside the country. 10 years after the celebration of our freedom, Madiba, in acknowledging that, had said, and I quote, in a cynical,
Order, honorable members. Order.
in a cynical world, we have
Order.
become, in a cynical world, we have become an inspiration to many. We signal that good can be achieved amongst human beings who are prepared to trust, prepared to believe in the goodness of the people, close quote. There's a lot that is expected of South Africa. And when you ask the Sri Lankans or ask the South Sudanese, why are you demanding South Africa? They say, because we know you will be honest and you will not come with strings attached. So it is only South Africans who speak ill about their own, not foreigners. There is no country that has resolved its problems of more than 300 years in 20 years. None in the world. It does not exist. So let us tell our people the truth and tell them of the milestones we have achieved. Sanitation was one of the biggest problems. I was born in a village. I didn't even know what that meant. It's very easy for you to sit here and talk about sanitation. That's why it's easy for you to come here and talk about sanitation. What is important
Order.
is
Shall we respect the House?
working together, Chair, we can achieve more, and we have achieved more with less. And we will continue to run, I think, workshops for honorary members of parliament. It's important so that we
Order,
understand
honorable member Paulson.
what honorable member of parliament of the DA, Mkhalapa, would say when we are outside the country, appreciating the good work we do. And then, because when we are in parliament, you need to be saying something for your party. Say something else. But I think if we all have run more workshops, it's one thing to talk about public diplomacy as officials. Let's also run workshops, because 20 years is too short for us to understand and appreciate the magnanimity of South Africa's contribution to world peace and development. I thank you, Chair, and I thank you, honorable members.
Thank you, Honorable Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. Honorable members, you are reminded that the debate on tourism budget vote will take place at 14 hours in the National Assembly chamber, and the debate on correctional services budget vote will take place at 14 hours in the old Assembly chamber. That concludes the debate, and the business of the Extended Public Committee is adjourned.